Welcome back to episode number 4 of Jump Ball, your new daily dose of NBA news and opinions. I am your host, Sam Conrad. Let's get straight into today's episode. I already know why you guys are here. We're here to talk about the Brooklyn Nets, and the single move that obviously kind of sparked this entire video was this one right here. According to Woj, quote, Brooklyn is trading center DeAndre Jordan for four future second-round picks, along with $5.78 million to Detroit for Jahlil Okafor and Sekou Demboya. The Pistons plan to work through a buyout on 2 years, $20 million owed to Jordan. The Nets would save $47 million in salary and taxes on this deal. Absolutely insane. I'm not going to talk too much about the move itself, but I want to say one thing. I don't understand what the Pistons are doing here. I really, 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 really don't. They are a rebuilding team. That's, obviously going in a younger direction. Maybe they think that they have potential to maybe win now. I'm not really sure. At the end of the day, all they get out of this deal is 4 future second round picks. And you know that almost none of them are really going to be like borderline first. They're all probably going to be the end of the second round, meaning they're going to hold little to no value. So why would they make this move? I truly don't understand it, especially when you take into consideration that after, of course, a buyout offer, that DeAndre Jordan's just going to leave the team and he would eventually sign with the Lakers. Were they maybe trying to clear some cap space? In all reality, I have no idea, but the Pistons, I don't understand really why they made this move, unless there's some other incentive involved somewhere that we're all missing as NBA fans. But the Brooklyn Nets making this move is absolutely massive. I'm really shocked, to say the least, because as you can see, he was expected to make basically $10 million for the next 3 years. And then because of some tax concerns, because they were pretty much already over the hard cap, I believe it was, they would be eventually paying close to $50 million in total after taxes, right? Because they would have to be paying a luxury tax of some sort. Because were spending so much money on so many guys. It was absolutely ridiculous. So by making this move, they're saving a crap ton of money. And on top of that, they're bringing in a pretty solid backup center. And he's not even going to be the backup. Most likely he'll probably be like their 3rd or 4th string option kind of off of the bench. We'll get into that a little bit later. And then they also brought in Sekou Demboya, who is an extremely raw prospect. Has been since day one. He's very raw, but he worked with KD a little bit over the offseason. So they have a little bit of chemistry together. And a lot of times people said that his potential would be like a worse version of KD, but he's got like the same build as him. So hopefully the hope would be that he could eventually become as good as him, not as good as him, but relatively good in comparison to KD as far as his scoring ability goes. So we'll talk a little bit about Sekou in general, but I want to talk about some of the other moves that this team made recently, because in like a week's time span, they just traded DeAndre Jordan, saving them a crap ton of money and also bringing in some pretty nice pieces. They also managed to bring in LaMarcus Aldridge just earlier today on a 1-year, $2.6 million contract after he was finally cleared to return, because if you don't know, he actually retired due to, I believe, a heart condition of some sort that once again just kind of forced him into retirement. But now he's coming back, and the Brooklyn Nets managed to sign him on a 1-year, $2.6 million contract. And I believe only a couple of days ago, I want to say, September 2nd. So this has literally all happened in about a 48-hour time period. They also managed to bring in Paul Millsap. So you're telling me that this team, a team that many already expected to win a championship, a team that already has an extremely good amount of depth, along with a phenomenal starting 5, just managed to bring in 2 pretty good veterans, especially considering that they probably won't be like backups or getting a crap ton of minutes. They'll be like third string guys off of the bench, right? Along with saving about $50 million basically in potential taxes and salary, along with another nice backup center and a high upside, pretty much low risk player in Sekou Demboya. It is absolutely insane. Let's talk about the Brooklyn Nets, because here's the thing about the Brooklyn Nets at this point. I understand that the Los Angeles Lakers are great. They are a super team. The Brooklyn Nets are a better super team. This not even better. That's the wrong way to phrase it. This team is more talented. If the Brooklyn Nets don't win a championship, I consider it a disappointment. I consider it a massive disappointment. Even if they lose to the Lakers in 7 games and every single game is determined by a last-second shot, this team is a disappointment in my eyes, because this team is far too talented at this point to have any excuse other than injuries to lose in the NBA Finals. It is ridiculous. Let's go over this. So you have Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and James Harden, three of the most talented offensive players that we have seen in this current era of NBA basketball. And they all fit together pretty well too. Kevin Durant, widely considered to be potentially the greatest scorer of all time. James Harden, a guy that drives your offense, is the engine to your offense and does a lot of playmaking for others, along with, of course, just giving you an easy 25 points per game. That's no big deal. And Kyrie Irving, who can also run a bit of offense for you, but then at the same time, is also just a phenomenal scorer in and of himself and has one of, if not the best handle on the basketball that we have ever seen. In my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinion, this is probably the most talented trio of players that we have ever seen team up together, which you already think is crazy in and of itself, right? Then we add on to the fact that they now have Joe Harris, an insane off-ball three-point shooter that also provides a little bit of defense playing at the three. And they have Nicholas Claxton, a great defensive piece for this team, which, defense has kind of been their quote-unquote biggest issue in a lot of people's eyes. A phenomenal defensive piece that gets around screens very well and does a good job switching onto opposing players, can pretty much guard the 1 through 5. I won't say that he guards the 1 or the 2 at an elite level, but he has the ability to do so if he does get switched onto them. So you don't have to be too concerned if, of course, at some point he does get switched onto a smaller, faster player, like, let's say, Stephen Curry or Bradley Beal or something like that. Now, let's take a look at their bench, because even though they already have one of, if not the best starting 5 in the entire league, they also have one of, if not the best bench in the entire league. Patty Mills, great three-point shooter. Javon Carter, great three-point shooter and also pretty good defender. Cameron Thomas got buckets in college. He was a phenomenal scorer, great at creating shots for himself. And also worked relatively well off ball. We didn't see it a ton, but he at least possessed a little bit of the ability to do so. Bruce Brown, great defensive piece for this team off of the bench. Very versatile as far as 1 through 3. Yeah, 1 through 3 goes, and he can guard all 3 positions once again at an elite level. We talked about Sekou Demboya already, low risk, high upside player, incredibly raw, but overall not bad off of the bench. And Blake Griffin provides you a little bit of offense, nice lob threat, nice cutter, great in transition. Overall, not too bad. Then that's just like their top 10. We still have other pieces to get to. I already talked about Javon Carter. Then if we move a little bit further down the list, we have Paul Millsap, solid stretch big man that also provides a little bit of defense on the inside and on the perimeter. Reggie Perry, solid defender on the interior. Day'Ron Sharpe, nice athletic big man that overall, not necessarily, I guess, raw. He does have a lot of skills to work on still, but overall, a nice fiery piece to have off your bench to kind of just come in, maybe ignite the offense a little bit, get a couple of highlight plays, play some nice bully ball basketball, and once again, just kind of ignite this team off of the bench. You have Jahlil Okafor, who is a very good post scorer. Other than that, isn't really great at anything, but he's coming off of the bench as like your 4th string center, so it really doesn't matter that much. And LaMarcus Aldridge, who was basically the Spurs' 2nd or 3rd option just about a year ago, is now coming off the bench for the Brooklyn Nets. A nice stretch big man that can score from the mid-range and from 3, but definitely, especially the mid-range. Solid finisher as well. Big-bodied big man. Great piece to have coming off the bench. If we count the amount of players on this team that I would be willing to have in my, let's say, 9-man to 10-man rotation on any NBA team, let's count them. 1, 2, 3, Kyrie Irving, Patty Mills, Javon Carter, James Harden 4, Cam Thomas 5, Joe Harris 6, Bruce Brown 7, Kevin Durant 8, Sekou Demboya 9, Paul Millsap 10. We'll move on. Nicholas Claxton 11, Blake Griffin 12, Jahlil Okafor 13, LaMarcus Aldridge 14. Guys that are coin flips to me: Day'Ron Sharpe 15, James Johnson, Reggie Perry 16 and 17, and DeAndre Bembry 18. That is 18 players on this roster potentially that I would be willing to have in my 9 to 10 man rotation. For sure, I believe I said 14 of these guys that I would be willing to have on my own team. So what does that mean for the Brooklyn Nets? Right now, it means that they literally have very little issues. I would say no issues, but they do have one major issue that I'll get to eventually. This team really has no issue. If, let's say, Javon Carter isn't cutting it, you have Patty Mills, Cam Thomas, DeAndre Bembry, Bruce Brown, guys that can all take his spot. If James Johnson is struggling, you have Reggie Perry, Paul Millsap, Sekou Demboya, Day'Ron Sharpe, Jahlil Okafor, all guys that can take his spot. The amount of players that they have to potentially fill in for a player that is struggling or that gets injured is incredible. The amount of depth on this team, along with their already amazing star power, is ridiculous. And it's not like they are only focused on offense. They have a great combination of offense and defense as well. This team has almost no holes whatsoever. And for the future, I already mentioned 14 to 18 players that I would have in my 9 to 10 man rotation in the NBA. This team, they just traded, I believe, 4 of these seconds that they currently own to the Detroit Pistons in that DeAndre Jordan trade, meaning they only do have this 2028 first round pick for sure of their own and 2 of these other seconds. Now they would still potentially obviously get some of the worst picks in like 2027, 2023, 2025, 2022. Excuse me, I just burped there. They would obviously get the less favorable pick, but that means that, of course, those picks are really not just going to be that valuable. They're going to be like 29th, 30th, 22nd. They're not going to be high picks whatsoever. But if at some point they want to make a trade for a nice, solid first round pick, or they want to get an upgrade at a certain position, like a really, really, really elite 6th man or something like that, they have 4 to 8 guys that they could potentially put in a trade to bring in more draft capital. Or if they want to even commit harder to winning now, to bring in a guy like, I'm just throwing a random name out there, let's say Dennis Schroeder, right? Dennis Schroeder, however you want to say his name. I've always said Schroeder, but I've heard more people saying Schroeder recently. Regardless, they can make moves to help save their future, or they can make moves to potentially help them win now. Now, I do want to say their future is definitely looking scary because they obviously have very, 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 very little draft capital in the future and not a ton of young players. They did bring in Sekou Demboya, which is nice to see. Nicholas Claxton looks like a pretty nice high upside piece. But other than those 2 guys, actually, and Bruce Brown's a pretty nice young player as well. But other than those 3 guys, like, they don't really have any young talent by any means. And none of those guys are probably going to be stars whatsoever. Actually, I mean, they might also have Cam Thomas and maybe Day'Ron Sharpe turns into something, but none of those guys really look like elite talents at the moment. I would say Cam Thomas has the most potential to do so, but I don't have any expectations of that whatsoever at the moment, right? So overall, the future looks bleak after, this big 3 retires, this whole core retires. It doesn't look like there's much left for the Brooklyn Nets, right? However, because they have those 4 to 8 guys that they could potentially trade to make moves, it doesn't look quite as bad. But this team is literally hanging on by a Band-Aid. And what I mean by that is they must stay healthy, because that was their biggest issue last year. If Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving were able to stay healthy last season, there's no doubt in my mind that they would have won the championship, even over a healthy LeBron and a Lakers squad. Looking back at it, I think that trio is just too talented to mess up whatsoever. But of course, that is definitely their biggest issue in the future and could really mess up this whole plan in an instant, right? I think that if healthy, this team could easily win the next 3 rings. Mainly because I'm not super excited about what I've seen from LeBron since returning from his injury. He once again just really doesn't look the same. But if he looks the same by next season, then I wouldn't be surprised if the Lakers managed to grab 1 or 2 rings from this team. But overall, if this team really just does not win a championship this year, I consider it a big disappointment. And Nets fans, you should be happy, but definitely remain cautious because injuries could easily take you guys down at any moment. And if that happens, the future does look bleak. But overall, that's all I had for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Jump Ball, and I will see you in the next episode tomorrow. Thank you, guys.